Hello, I'm Mike Watts, publisher of RiversandFeathers.com, a website devoted to short stories on just about anything fly fishing. Welcome to our Rivers and Feathers instructional fly tying videos, along with Alex Hawley, a former student and teaching assistant in fly fishing and fly tying, and an excellent fly tyer. We'll be leading you on the different patterns and recipes as we go along our journey, and use these patterns to help you catch more fish. Alex will also talk about some of the techniques on how to fish the flies and where to fish them as he explains the recipes. Welcome to Rivers and Feathers.
Today we're going to be tying what I call a Rainbow Warrior variation. For this fly, there's many variations of it. However, today we're going to be tying it on a size 14 fulling mill hook, as well as a 2.4 millimeter black bead. To begin this fly, I like to start out with some red thread. In particular, I'm using UTC 140 red thread, and I make myself about halfway down the shank of the hook before I trim off, making sure that my thread's not going to go anywhere. Next, we're going to start tying in our tail, in which case I like to take about 4 fibers of pheasant tail, make sure they're nice and lined up, and pull them from the stem. For this fly, and like many nymphs, I like to make sure that my tail is about the length of the hook shank. So I'll measure that up, make one loose wrap over the pheasant tail fibers, followed by a second tighter wrap. I'll then begin moving my thread up the hook shank towards the bead, covering those pheasant tail fibers to create myself a little bit of a body for the fly. I'll then trim the excess and begin moving my thread towards the back of the hook. I like to leave my thread about at the midpoint. For then, I will take some ultra wire in a size small, and I like to give myself about 2 to 3 inches just so I have enough room to work with, in which case I'll then begin tying this in on the sides of the hook. I like to make myself about 2 or 3 good wraps, maybe 4, before I start tying in my Vivus pearl tinsel. What this is a flat tinsel that will be used for the body, and the wire will act as counter ribbing for the body. I then tie in my pearl hollow tinsel, and I wrap both this and the wire right where I left my tail. Now I'll begin taking my thread and moving it towards the front of the hook. And as you can see, I'm creating a nice body as I'm doing this. And if I see any imperfections that I don't like, I tend to just make some more wraps and cover it up. Next step is I will take my hollow tinsel and begin wrapping it so that it makes its way towards the eye of the hook, making sure that all of my thread has been covered. And what I like about this pearl tinsel is that you can actually see through it, such that whatever thread you have begun tying, you can actually see underneath, which I think adds some color in the water. Now once you've reached your bead of the hook, what I like to do is make one wrap behind it and one wrap in front of it, just to ensure it's good and tight, and then trim the excess. I'll now take my wire and counter rib my hollow tinsel. This not only secures the tinsel to the fly, but it also acts as ribbing that you also will see in natural flies. This is a great pattern for all times of the year. It's very flashy and it has great capability to get in the water deep. I'll then take one wrap over the wire and one wrap in front of the wire, and then begin to helicopter it off to make sure that I have a nice clean flush fly. Now I will take my rainbow dubbing. I like to use a dark shade of this dubbing. I feel like it gives it some nice contrast to the fly. I then make a nice small dubbing noodle as tight as I possibly can. And we do this by simply taking the dubbing and twisting it on. I'll then take that fine dubbing noodle and slide it up to the hook shank. And then I'll take that dubbing noodle and make wraps right at the bead to create a collar for this fly. Lastly, I like to make myself 2 or 3 wraps right at the bead just so I can start to see the thread, and this creates a little hot spot that I think adds some variation and some pop to the fly. We can then finish the fly by using our whip finish tool, making 4 to 5 wraps and securing it down. Then we trim it tightly. If it's a hard day of fishing, I like to fish this fly generally below something that is a natural pattern. I think it's good to have some contrast in the water, something between very vibrant and very flashy, as well as something more natural pattern, just to see what they can be biting, because it can be tricky sometimes.
Thank you for tuning in to our Rivers and Feathers YouTube video on instructional fly tying. Also, be sure to tune in to the RiversandFeathers.com, where you'll find short stories on just about anything fly fishing. And we want to give a special thanks to Regal Bice. They have supported our efforts in our instructional videos, and we've enjoyed our revolution. And on that vise, you can tie anything from midges to monster flies. Remember, RiversandFeathers.com.